Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Scott, and I am the Director of Alumni and Family Relations. And it is my honor to welcome all of you to another gathering of families and parents and special supporters for our students to let you know what's going on at Bethel and what we're planning for your students this fall. So tonight we have a few different guests from campus who are leaders in their various areas who are going to share with you what they're planning and at this point, and that will hopefully help you have conversations with your student about what they can expect and about what you can expect as a parent. Hopefully you received the communication that we sent out last week that generally gave some parameters for our expectations for our community, what opening up campus for students will look like, some different elements. Our goal tonight is to share some of those points in detail. I do want to direct you to a new website that's available for our community members. It's bethel.edu/COVID-19. I also want to direct you to the Parent and Family Facebook page, because as we get updates from the COVID-19 update page, we'll make sure we post them there as well. I do want to announce that we're actively working on navigating or creating a page called Navigating Bethel. It's going to be a resource for parents and families that will give you a better idea of what's going on this fall. So we're working on developing that page. I also want to acknowledge that this is a stressful time. We recognize that families are dealing with their own issues in regard to COVID-19, how they're responding to their workplaces, their families, people that they're taking care of. And I want to let you know that Bethel this fall is going to look in one way like it's always looked, and that is that we are working on creating an academic experience that is Christ-centered, a community that nurtures our faith, relationships, academics, and a great place to be. So I just want you to know that that is at the core of what we're working on, but we're also working on the details of what that is going to look like. So I do want to let you know that tonight we have an agenda. We're going to get an update from our brand new president, Ross Allen. We'll also hear from Christy Moline, who is the chair of our COVID committee. She's going to give some details about what fall will look like. And then we're going to have kind of a day in the life of a student. So Dr. Julie Finnern, who's our associate provost for academics, is going to share about what that will look like for students inside the classroom. Dean Miranda Powers from Student Life will give us an update on residence life, health, and promoting social well-being in that regard, and then I will wrap things up. So as always, my office is a place where you can start by asking the questions. I know I've had lots of questions about what this is going to look like. I recognize that there are some people who are not appreciative of approaches, and some people are extremely appreciative of our approaches, and we have to wrestle that out together. So with that, I'm going to pray and get us started. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to gather together as a community. And I do pray that we would sense your unifying spirit throughout Bethel University this fall. Would you be with our leaders as they're seeking to make decisions that are wise and thoughtful, considerate. And God, I ask that each student, each faculty member, each staff member would put others before themselves, and that we would, at the end of all this COVID season, look back and say, God, what did you do? You did such cool things, and we're so thankful. So God, I pray for this meeting that you would make our thoughts clear, help us to have a really good understanding about how we're going to proceed, and help us to go forward with great confidence in what you are going to do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so with that, I'd like to introduce our brand new president, Ross Allen. He's been on the job officially since July 1st. I know he's been around a little bit earlier than that, taking an assessment of what's going on. And so many would say, wow, what a time to become a president. But I heard him with my own ears last week say that this doesn't faze him in regards to his decision. He's still very excited to be our new president. He's rearing, he's ready to go, and he's got some great ideas. So President Allen, welcome.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks for your comments. Parents, welcome, and it's great to be with you. Wish it were in person. I look forward to that, and I eagerly look forward to meeting you at some way, whether that's through Zoom or ideally in person here in the future, whether you're a returning parent or whether you're a new parent. As Jennifer said, this hasn't fazed me. For those of you who know my background, I've been used to organizations that have been in transition and have various levels of crisis, and so I recognize that God's hand has been in this in a variety of ways, and one of those is perhaps my background. I certainly expect and look for God to use that background to step through this, because I realize that there's a lot of dimensions to this, and our students' health is absolutely critical, but that health is a broad spectrum of health, of mental health, physical health, and spiritual health and development. And so as we step into this, we realize people are in a lot of different perspectives on this journey and in the midst of this pandemic, as Jennifer referenced. And so I recognize, in fact, I've acknowledged that I know 5 people well that have died from this. And in each case, I've referenced that they don't miss us and they're in a better place and they're in eternal glory now. And yet I miss them, their families miss them deeply. And so their lives were cut short. And I realize there is a reality to this pandemic that we need to take very seriously. And so we absolutely do. But we do that in the broad context of our responsibility as a university for our students, for our faculty, and for our staff. And so as we do that, as Jennifer said, this is we are excited to be coming back together in person. For those who are comfortable and are able to do that, we're also going to have some other forums, and you'll hear about that today, that make that help us to come together in a way that still honors who Bethel is, but for those who need to do that without having the risks that they may perceive or that may be, in fact, reality with the way we come together. So we're going to talk through how we're going to come together, and hopefully within that spectrum of where you're at, you'll see that there's a balance, an appropriate, safe balance. And so we'll talk through that. But it's all in the context of who we are called to do as a ministry and to minister to our students and how we do that most effectively. And so you'll hear descriptions and evidence of all the work that has been done up until this point. There's been tremendous work, and it's been fun to see faculty in working on how they manage classes in a new way, in a new dynamic way. And I trust that that's going to be dramatically different than the experience that that students had in the spring when we had to switch so actively and so quickly. I also want to emphasize that that we'll get new information. We'll adjust as we go. In fact, you may have seen conflicting information recently. We had some great new dialogue with the Minnesota Department of Health, and Christy will talk about that. But even our masking, our face covering policy has changed here recently, and I apologize in advance for the changes that we'll make. But the reality that we're gaining new and more information regularly. And again, from my background, I came from Medtronic and a lot of years there. You get that information, you adjust and you modify to optimize the experience that you have. So this is not about us being unclear or changing our mind without any basis for it, but we're intentionally moving forward, adding to the information we have and adjusting so that we have the best information. And if you're not watching it out there, it is changing rapidly. So we're adjusting to that. One of those choices we're looking at for those of you who have student athletes is around competition for the fall sports. And we are absolutely committed as a university that we come back in some form to have competitive athletics, but we also know that we do that in the broader context of what's happening nationally. Unfortunately, that national impact, although it's different than Minnesota, will impact some of our decisions because we also operate within a conference. If we're up to Bethel, we would be back competing in a safe way and with various constraints and monitoring measurements, but we also need to be thoughtful and do that in the context of what we're doing within the conference. And at this point, it's unsure. We have meetings going on right now. We're relying on, again, new information that's coming out, information from NCAA and information that we continue to glean from medical experts and various constituencies. So we're still working on that, and a decision has not been made. You have probably seen that we will not have non-conference play. And there's a variety of factors that we're going through to make sure that whatever we do will be safe, but also optimize the student experience. And frankly, if we do enter into a student competition, it will be done with a variety of measures that are safe and have controls around that. We will also have monitoring in place if we do that. And if instead we take an alternative path, we'll ensure that whether it's practice or whether it's preparing for a different way to approach, there's also discussion about whether we move to the spring. Of course, you've heard that nationally. And if we do that, we'll also do that with discipline and thought. So that's an example of one that's moving quickly, and we'll continue to monitor that and communicate that back out to you as we get more information. And again, just so you know, there is a lot of work going on to that, as well as other areas that you'll hear comments and discussion about today. So I want to transfer over to Christy. Obviously, we want to make sure we get information to you, and this is a part of that, but we'll, I'm sure, have other avenues for you to speak back in, and we'll continue to get more clarification as we go forward. So Christy, I'm pleased to announce, and I'll ask Christy to give it a little bit of background, because as I said, God is in this, and for us at Bethel, Christy is a part of that. So Christy has experience that she'll speak to that plays directly into this, and we are so benefited. We benefit so much from her, and I'm so grateful that God has given her that background and that experience, and that she is here for a time as this. So Christy is the new Director of COVID Operations for Bethel University. Thanks, Christy.
Great, thank you so much, Ross. My name is Christy Moline. My day job at Bethel is leading the Center for Healthcare Excellence. And Ross mentioned I have particular background in preparing for pandemics. And I wanted to share just a little bit about that with you. And then lead into how we've approached preparing for our fall return to campus, so that you have some understanding of what's gone into it, and also what you can expect as a community as we come back together. I also want to share some specific plan updates related to areas of planning that we've been getting a lot of questions in, including testing, isolation, quarantine, contact tracing, and also policies related to social distancing and face covering. So I'll plan on covering that during this time together. So first of all, my background. I spent several years doing public health preparedness planning. And during that time, I worked with local public health agencies and other emergency responder organizations in order to improve their capacity to respond to public health events, such as the pandemic that we're currently in. So drawing on that expertise and that experience, I'm honored and humbled that I would be able to leverage that to help Bethel navigate the future in a COVID world. Our planning strategy has really been, like everyone else in higher ed and almost every other organization, we've had to turn over every single operation of the university and make it COVID ready. And as you can imagine, this is a tremendous amount of work, and there have been over 100 people at Bethel working to contribute plans, and we're currently working on over 30 plans that have been drafted in order for us to be able to come back to campus safely. It's a huge job, and to give you kind of a better understanding of how we've approached it, I've categorized it into 3 buckets. And I would say the bulk of our time has been spent really on setting our community expectations. And these are the things that we're taking guidance from local public health agencies. We're monitoring what other universities are doing. We are really trying to get this right, as our community expectations are going to be foundational in our ability to come back together and mitigate the spread of COVID at Bethel. So the first bucket is establishing community expectations. I'm going to spend more time on this later, but to give you an idea of what that is we are asking that every member of our community be flexible. This is still an ever-changing situation. We are getting updates constantly and are making revisions to our plans as we're more informed, frankly. We're going to be implementing some other policies and expectations related to staying home when you're sick, monitoring your health status, and other areas that, again, will help us to maintain health and safety on campus. The other bucket of our planning has been supporting those community expectations, and we do that through things like creating policies around sick leave that enable our faculty members to take the time that they need to recover, and policies around student leave, where we would ask students to do their learning virtually in the event that they are sick. We've also increased our cleaning protocols. We have changed our schedules to allow for social distancing. There's a lot that we have done in order to just support the community expectations that we are setting. And the final bucket of our planning is really in reinforcing those expectations. And a lot of the expectations are around social distancing. And so when you come to campus, the ways that we've reinforced that expectation is in making sure that our common areas are set up in a socially distanced manner. You will see sitting areas that the furniture is all 6 feet apart so that we can account for that social distancing. We have occupancy signs in various rooms and areas on campus so people know that this is the number of people we can accommodate safely in this gathering space. We will have hand hygiene reminders and sanitizer stations all throughout campus, just reminding people that as a member of this community, we expect a minimum standard of hand hygiene. And really this means wash your hands and wash them again. And we've also installed things like sneeze guards in areas where there is a lot of foot traffic and where our faculty or staff or students might be serving a large number of the community at any given time. So again, our planning approach, 3 buckets: establishing the community expectations, supporting the expectations through policies, procedures, and protocols, and reinforcing those expectations through physical infrastructure changes like increased hand sanitizer stations and signage, etc. With that, I want to move to some specific plan updates in areas that directly relate to COVID. One of the areas we've gotten a lot of questions in is specific to COVID testing. And we have been working closely with the Minnesota Department of Health on what Bethel will build as far as testing capacity on campus. And I'm pleased to tell you that we are building the capacity to be able to test on campus at Bethel. This is going to be done through an arrangement with Mayo Clinic Laboratories, where they will actually be providing the test kits. They will be running the samples, and we will be building capacity to collect samples and also relay results to our community members. We also are working with MDH on who do we test, and currently the guidance is we should be testing symptomatic individuals. So those community members who have symptoms of COVID would have testing available. We are not planning to test large groups of people as they come back to campus. That is not advised by the Minnesota Department of Health. And primarily the reason for that is because the testing is only as good as the moment the test sample was collected, and could change literally an hour later when that community member goes off campus and potentially is exposed to COVID. So we're working closely with MDH, and we'll modify that plan as anything comes up. But at minimum, we will have testing on campus for symptomatic individuals. And this is really a pillar in our ability to mitigate the broad spread of any disease at Bethel. Another area of our planning that we've gotten a lot of questions about is isolation and quarantine, and we have identified spaces on campus that can be used to isolate those who are ill with COVID and also to quarantine those who may have been exposed. Again, being consistent with Minnesota Department of Health guidelines, we actually had the Department of Health on campus last week touring some of these spaces, and they affirmed that our plan is good. They were pleased with the spaces we've set aside and offered us some additional guidance on how we could enhance that plan. Though we have spaces set aside on campus for both isolation and quarantine, in some cases, students who test positive may be asked to recover at home, away from campus. And this is going to be done primarily to best support that student's needs as they recover and limit the spread to other community members through any other potential exposure. Another area of our planning is really in contact tracing. So as we get positive test results, we'll be working really closely with community members to identify those individuals who have been named as close contacts. And right now, the definition of close contact is anyone that you have spent more than 15 minutes with at less than 6 feet distance. So another motivator for our community members to maintain social distance so that you are not named as a close contact in the event that someone you spend time with turns up as a positive COVID test. Now, an area that I really want to spend some time on is our community expectations. And this has been the most difficult, perhaps the most contentious, the most widely debated part of any of the plans that have happened anywhere, not just at Bethel. These are very personal things, or very, very sensitive things. And I want to again acknowledge, as Ross did, we are all on a spectrum about what we believe about COVID. Some of us believe that if we leave the safety of our homes, we will risk exposure and potentially death due to COVID. Some of us believe that this is all made up by the government as an attempt to control us. And we have everything in between. And what I'm asking of you is an extra measure of grace for where people are at on that spectrum. We have the privilege of coming together in community and living together. And we are going to ask that every member of our community live out the biblical standard of membership in the body of Christ and caring well for our neighbors. So with that in mind, this is that really was at the core of how these community expectations have been established. We are going to be asking our community members to monitor their health status on a daily basis. This means paying closer attention than perhaps you ever have before to your symptoms any given day. Are you feeling a little bit ill? Do you have a new cough? We're going to ask people to check their temperature. And obviously, if you have signs or symptoms of COVID, that you refrain from coming out into our community that day and take an extra day or two to monitor those symptoms and be evaluated to see whether or not you need a COVID test. So monitoring your health status, staying home when you are sick or you've been exposed. And this is going to be, through the isolation and quarantine policies that we have. And we're just really going to ask that you adhere to those, again, to care well for our neighbors and limit the potential for exposing other more vulnerable people to this disease. We're going to be asking people to adhere to proper hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. These are the same things you've seen everywhere you go. Wash your hands, cough into your sleeve, sneeze into your sleeve. We're going to increase the signage and reminders around campus and engage in some public health information campaigns to increase community awareness around these things. We're going to ask people to abide by posted signage. So one of the questions we've been asked a number of times is, what will dining look like at Bethel? And what we have done, our dining center has to follow Minnesota Department of Health guidelines for restaurants. So we have capacity limits, we have socially distanced seating, and we will need people to pay attention. When the dining hall counter says that we've reached capacity, we'll encourage community members to go elsewhere to find food options. In order to support that, we have increased the number of takeout meal options that we have and increased the number of locations around campus where students can use flex dollars in order to purchase those meal options. So more details will be provided as we start rolling out the details for students as we get closer to the fall start, but wanted you to know that what we have done to date regarding dining. Abide by social distance guidelines and wearing face coverings. These are probably the most highly contended elements to our response and anybody's response. And to date, these are the two things that we know have the greatest potential to reduce the risk of spreading COVID. So again, regardless of where you're at on the spectrum, where I'm at on the spectrum, we're going to ask all community members to, as much as possible, maintain 6 foot distance from others. When you cannot maintain 6 foot of social distance, we are going to ask that you cover your nose and mouth with a face covering. And this is uncomfortable. I don't love wearing a mask. I don't know anybody that does. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. But again, in order to care well for those around us who are more susceptible and have greater risk of COVID, we are asking our community members to give up some comfort in order to demonstrate love for those around us. So those are the elements of our community expectations. As we get closer to fall, we will be putting more information out for you. I am going to ask you specifically for an extra measure of grace. One, grace for those in our community who feel differently than we do about this virus and all of the things related to it. 2, an extra measure of grace for those of us working behind the scenes and communicating information as we have it. This is an ever-changing situation, and we will publish information when we have it, knowing that that information may only be as good as the moment it was posted. So again, ask for your grace in that. We do welcome your questions and thoughts and comments and concerns, and we'll do our best to start to craft responses to those for you. to the extent we're able to. The fact is we might not have all of the information or all the details yet. So again, ask for your grace. But I'm going to pass it along to Julie Finneran at this time to walk you through, the academic elements of a day in the life of a student this fall. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Christy. And though those details are flexible, they are so important and they will carry over into our academic learning environments. We're so excited to have students back on campus and in classes this fall. And our classes at Bethel will continue to include faith integration, high expectations for academic learning, and regularly scheduled interactions with faculty and with other students. I'm very glad for this opportunity to give you some details of how this will actually look. So throughout this summer, faculty are redesigning courses in innovative ways so that they're able to reach learning outcomes through a combination of physically face-to-face interactions and also online experiences. You may have heard the term already, but we are calling this modified face-to-face learning. So this means that depending on the day, students will be learning in a physical classroom. They will maybe learning by joining Zoom class meetings or participating in learning activities on their own time as directed by professors through Moodle. Or one student may likely be participating in all of those methods on the same day. If you haven't been introduced to Moodle yet, it's the web-based system that faculty have been using for quite a few years now to organize their class materials in a way so that students can access them online. Because of the need of social distancing, like Christy was talking about, students will experience changes in our classroom and in our schedule. One of these is that the start and end times for classes have been slightly adjusted. This is to allow for fewer people to be moving in the hallways at the same time. These adjustments to class schedules have already been made, and students can find them by going to My Bethel and by reviewing their schedules there. Those are the correct times. Classrooms will also look different. As a student enters a classroom, they will see that furniture has been removed, furniture has been rearranged to engineer for social distancing. The furniture must stay in those arrangements. Students will be expected to sit in the same seat throughout the term. This is to assist with contact tracing if it is needed. Students are also responsible to use the provided materials to wipe down their desks and chairs before classes begin. Some classrooms, a few of them, will also have the plexiglass, the sneeze guard installed. Because of this social distancing, there will be less capacity in our classrooms. This means that we're using some other larger new spaces for classrooms, such as there'll be classes taking place in the Benson Great Hall, the Underground, the Lakeside Center, and other larger spaces around campus. This smaller capacity also means that for some classes, a few classes, not all enrolled students can be physically present in the classroom on the same day. So that's one reason for the modified face-to-face. Depending on what will result in the best learning, students will be directed by their faculty, by the professor of the class, to sometimes come physically face-to-face, sometimes join via Zoom, or on other days to engage in other learning activities that the faculty member has designed. So faculty will communicate those specific plans for a specific course to students in their class. As Christy mentioned, the face covering policies will also carry over into classroom spaces. So though the majority of classes are scheduled to have a physical face-to-face component, some classes will not meet in a physical face-to-face setting, and this is for a variety of reasons. Every term, there are some classes that are originally scheduled for online, and the same is true for this fall. For these classes, students may not have a scheduled class time. They may not meet in real time. That was what was planned originally. There are also some other classes that have been moved to a virtual mode because the faculty need to teach remotely due to health vulnerabilities, or because of that limitation of class space that I talked about just a minute ago. It may have been necessary. For these classes, students will have regular class meetings in real time using Zoom or some other similar platform during the scheduled class times that are listed on the schedules in My Bethel. So that would be the student's point of reference, is to go back to My Bethel, and then they can see if there is a scheduled class time or not. Academic support is always important at Bethel, and that will still be true this fall. Students who are included in the vulnerable people group for COVID, or any other student who wants to request a disability-related accommodation, should do so as soon as possible, so we have the best chance to prepare to meet your needs. Students do that by contacting the Office of Accessibility Resources and Services. We also often refer to that as ORS, either by phone or by their email address. Academic support is, again, as always, going to be available through help sessions in the Ask office. This fall, many of those sessions will be available virtually. There will also be some physically face-to-face sessions, and just a reminder for students with those to make sure to follow the face covering and social distance guidelines that are true across campuses. Because there are going to be fewer drop-in opportunities, I strongly encourage students to reserve the help sessions in advance to make sure that that support is available in a timely manner. There are plenty of opportunities for support. Just make sure that you're accessing them. So, really important question: what if a student is sick? As has been already said, a student should not come to class if they are experiencing any symptoms. And then past that, if considering a student's health, that's the first concern, if it's possible, the students can still learn remotely. That's part of the purpose for setting up classes in a modified face-to-face setting. That same remote learning is also available for students who are exposed to COVID and need to be quarantined, and to students who need to access classes virtually for the full semester. If a student is too ill to engage in classwork, then you can still expect the same attention to their specific situation as faculty have given in the past and will continue to give in the future. I want to end with just a few specific situations. What if a student is planning on a clinical or field experience or an internship this fall? A couple of points about that. The first one is that a lot of details are still being determined by Bethel's off-campus partners, and as they are still putting together their plans for this fall. An example of that is the K-12 school systems. The second point is that Bethel has established a checklist for the requirements of acceptability of a site placement. And so department chairs or program directors will be reviewing each site individually to see if it has met those requirements or not, and give approval for a student to go to an off-site location. What if I'm a student in the BUILD program? As you received last week in the BUILD update, the BUILD staff has already been sending out information regarding what to expect this fall. The August personal learning plan meetings are also a great time to have those individual conversations regarding questions and plans for the fall. The BUILD staff will also be providing specific skill training regarding COVID policies for Bethel students. These will be available to Bethel students in the BUILD program who will be expected to complete that training before coming to campus. And as always, don't hesitate to contact the BUILD office by phone or by BUILD email. They are very glad to work with you on individual questions. So lastly, what about classroom settings that are unique, such as musical and theater rehearsals and performances? There's a lot of factors that have been considered in these areas, but I'll highlight a few of them. The first thing is that there will be reduced number of people at these rehearsals, and they're going to use larger spaces, and even if weather permits, outdoor spaces. There also will be increased social distancing for wind instruments and for vocal rehearsals. And thinking about theater rehearsals, the acting will be blocked to maintain social distancing whenever that's possible. And if it's not possible, then extra hygiene precautions will be taken. We are planning to release high-quality recorded performances for both theater and musical ensembles, though we will continue to consider, if the conditions allow, adjusting some of our live theater performances, but having small socially distanced audiences. So we'll see what happens with that. I know I've shared a lot of information. Though some of our learning formats need to look different this fall, we continue to plan to come together as a Bethel community in just a few weeks. And I cannot wait to see our students. Miranda will continue to take us through a day in the life of a Bethel student.
Thanks, Julie. I just appreciate all that our academic departments are doing to welcome students back, and we're looking forward to a great fall. My name is Miranda Powers, and I work as the Dean of Student Programs here at Bethel, and I just want to echo my excitement to have your students back on our campus this fall. Students are really the heartbeat of Bethel, and it's been far too quiet around here without them. And just the last couple weeks, I've been back on campus, and it is just so exciting to see the new science building going up, to see all that is happening on our campus, and we can't wait for students to be back here, creating some excitement and energy and all the things that they do so well. So we're grateful that they'll be back here in just a few weeks. Many people have been working hard this summer to put the health and well-being of your students at the forefront. And I just want to assure you that while we can't promise that everything is going to go exactly as planned this fall, we're working really hard to be nimble, to be flexible, to lay a great foundation for safety and well-being of your students. So we know that part of our ability to be together will be to understand our deep connection to one another. So our team's been working on a reopening document that will come out soon, and this will indicate a variety of campus guidelines for community living. Included in this document will be a community agreement that we're asking students, staff, and faculty to read and abide by. This will include the things that Christy talked about: wearing face coverings, where 6-foot distance is not possible, taking charge of our own health, and considering how our choices to be in risky situations might impact those around us. And so students were asking, parents, we're asking your students to say, how does my choice to go off campus and be in this situation, how might it impact my professor or my roommate's grandma or my roommate's ability to be at their nursing internship, or any of the things that may be a part of a student's daily life. I know many of you are wondering what our residence life will look like this year. And we want you to know that just last week, we're working closely with the Minnesota Department of Health, and a representative visited to tour our spaces, to discuss our plans, and had really great feedback for us. So we will have no more than 2 students in a residence hall room this year. And one other thing I just want to mention is that we have done summer housing. So about 70 students have lived on our campus this summer. And while that looks different than what fall will be like, it's gone really well. And we've used that as an opportunity to learn about adjustments that we might need to make. There's going to be some limits on how many visitors can be in any of the given rooms at a time. So students will know, but that'll be about 2 over capacity, depending on what the space looks like. We're also placing some limits on campus visitors on campus. So right now, campus visitors who come to campus will just be able to be on campus between 7 a.m. and 1 a.m. Every day. And then as things need to, we'll adjust and change those. Our lounge spaces in residence hall areas and on campus will be set up to promote social distancing. And students will be able to use common kitchens in residence halls, but they'll need to bring their own utensils to do that. Each student will be provided with 2 masks and thermometers that they can use to monitor their own health on campus. And we're sort of thinking of residence areas as family units and encouraging students to stick to those family units as much as possible. While we're allowing them to visit other residence halls, again, we want them to try to be outside as much as possible, to stay in common areas, and we're trying to protect res hall rooms as really that off space for students and their roommates to not wear masks, to be free of some of those maybe public things that we're asking them to do. So I think that will be an important piece for our students. I know we are getting many questions about what Welcome Week will look like, and even for returning students, how we're asking you to return to campus. So I wanted to cover that. We've spread out our move-in days to account for social distancing and to allow less traffic on campus for services such as the bookstore, ID card photos, kind of all those daily things that students need to take care of to set themselves up to start well. Both new and returning students will be able to sign up for a time using their My Housing page starting July 27th. And commuters, we know this is a little bit odd, but we're actually going to give you an opportunity to sign up in that My Housing system, which can be found on My Bethel, starting July 27th too, for a time to come to campus to pick up your necessary items such as books. And we know that maybe some of you, especially new commuters, haven't been to campus. And so commuter parents and families, we want you to be able to do that as a way of launching your students. So there are designated days for each group. And when you go into My Housing, your designated days that you fall into will be the ones that show for you to sign up. So once you go in there, this will make more sense. But for example, if you're a fall athlete, we know what day you're supposed to be coming. So you'll be able to sign up for a time on that particular day. And only the days that you can come will show up for you. One of the things that's a change for some of you returning parents and also for some of you new parents is that some of you might come and settle your items, and then your student will come back later in the week. So for example, if you're a local family, we're asking that maybe you come on that Monday or Tuesday, the 24th or 25th. You'll come, you'll make your student's bed, you'll get their room all set up, maybe you'll pick up your books and get your ID card, and then you'll leave campus. So you'll have a window to do those things. Because what does every parent want to do? Make their student's bed. That's always the most thing. I want to make sure their bed's made, that they're set up, ready to go. So we want to give you an opportunity to do that, but we also want to provide other families with some time to do that. And so in order to do that in a socially distanced way, we'll have you come and then take your student home and then drop them back off for orientation. So all of those details will be sent out to you and revealed in a variety of ways. One thing that you can do now is check the Before You Arrive page on our Welcome Week website. It includes a lot of details that are helpful, especially for incoming parents. Either way, returning student or new student, one of the things we're asking students to do this year is order their textbooks online. These can either be shipped to your house directly or picked up upon your arrival, return to campus. So make sure that you do that, because that will help you get set up well to participate in classes this fall. In terms of social interaction on campus, I know we've gotten a few family questions about this. We know that community is one of our most unique attributes at Bethel, right? And that God is at work on our campus and in the lives of your students through things like discipleship groups, through residence halls, through commuter life programming. And I just want to acknowledge that our students are excited to be back together, but like all of us, they're on a spectrum, right? Some of them want things to look exactly as normal, and they're like, things are going to be different here on campus. And some of them are really nervous about being back. So our team is committed, like I said, to laying that foundation and to being nimble. But we're also working really hard to have social events and connections on campus. So typically in any given year, we have a social event the first 6 weeks of campus on Friday, and we're going to try to do that. Additionally, we'll have commuter events and residence hall programming on Saturday nights to try to keep students invested in here on campus. And if you're a returning student, those events are for you too, and we'll have some specific things for you. We know that our ability to stay together will largely be predicated on student behavior and reducing our exposure to higher risk situations. So more than ever, we want students to be learning about their connectedness to each other and maybe the need to sacrifice or be inconvenienced so that they can experience the gifts of living and learning together this fall. But as a residence life and student life team, we also know we got to create some compelling events for them to want to come to and to create those social connections on campus. And we're working hard to do that. As we close, I just want to say finally, sometimes when we talk to families, I say when they come to college, there's things that you've done for them that we need them to do for themselves. And there's also things that they haven't talked to you about that we want to encourage them to talk with you more about. So I would say that's more true than ever. If you're still doing their laundry or reminding them to take medication or that they need to go to bed or get sleep, this is a good summer to have some of those serious conversations about them taking their health seriously, eating well, getting proper sleep, and maybe discuss what it means to give up things, to think of others. Maybe that's something that isn't really real to them, but as parents and spouses and all those things, we know that later in life, we often give up things for those that we love, and parents are doing that often for children. So have those conversations with your students about their interconnectedness to each other and about their need to care well for themselves this fall. I just want to end by saying the Lord is at work on our campus, and that isn't changing at Bethel because of COVID-19. And we are going to do everything that we can to make sure this is a great environment for them. And we know it's going to be a great year together. So thanks for your trust in us, and know that we're going to keep up the good work here. And we can't wait to see your students in just a few weeks.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate your expertise. I appreciate your positivity that is based in reality and based in the knowledge of the areas that you've been working on to prepare our campus for our students. One of the phrases that came to my mind as I was listening to all of you is that when my kids were little, we would say that we are flexible thinkers in the Scott family. Flexible thinkers, that's the phrase that we would use. Because that's what's required as a child growing up in the Scott household. And I think that is what is going to be required for all of us at Bethel's campus this fall. We are going to be asked to be flexible thinkers, to be creative. And the word that I also want to piggyback on is Christy's word, which was to offer grace. So if we can be flexible and offer grace to each other, things are going to go well. And I believe that Bethel is prepared to do that for your students, with your students, for our faculty and staff as well. So thanks for joining us. I want to encourage you to be in prayer for Bethel, to be in prayer for our faculty as they are really working hard to accommodate new measures to create an excellent Christ-centered education for your students, to be in prayer for our residence halls, our resident directors, our A's who are very excited for to welcome your students back to campus. So we'll always be available at parents@bethel.edu if you have any questions or comments, and I can help you find the right place to get the answers. God bless.